Hello again, and welcome to this live stream where we're going to learn CSS Flexbox and CSS Grid in our journey to conquer the freeCodeCamp curriculum. Welcome everyone who joined in this live stream, and also hello for those of you who are watching the recording in the future. Alright, this is an interesting topic. So far, we covered basic HTML, HTML5 and CSS. We looked at applied visual design and accessibility, and we looked a little bit into responsive web design principles. There were 4 sections. So now we're looking at 2 of the biggest topics in CSS nowadays, Flexbox and Grid. So it should be a lot of fun. To be honest, I haven't looked at them yet, so this will be new to me too. Although I know Flexbox, I don't know CSS Grid that much, so I'm going to learn with you. Okay, hello to the chat. San and Abu and Ishan. He says he's watching from the future. Okay, welcome Ishan from the future. Alright, so let me get my headset ready and we can proceed. Let's see if everything is up and running. Good. So CSS Flexbox. We have 17 exercises. So let's start with the introduction. The website user interface, or UI, has 2 components. First, there are the visual elements, such as colors, fonts, and images. Second, there is a placement or positioning of those elements. In responsive web design, a UI layout must accommodate many different browsers and devices. So yeah, that is responsive web design. You want your website to look nice, both on mobile, on desktop, on tablet, and all the devices. CSS3 introduced flexible boxes, or Flexbox. Let me zoom in a little bit for you. Okay. To create page layouts for a dynamic UI. It is a layout mode that arranges elements in a predictable way for different screen sizes and browsers. While somewhat new, all popular modern browsers support Flexbox, which is great. This section covers how to use Flexbox and the different layout options it offers. Alright, let's go to the first exercise. Welcome Clink in the chat, how are you? Alright. Okay, let me down on my right screen so I can see that everything's working. Good. Use display flex to position 2 boxes. This section uses alternating challenge styles to show how to use CSS to position elements in a flexible way. That's where Flexbox comes from, the Flexbox name. First, a challenge will explain theory. Then a practical challenge using a simple tweet component will apply the Flexbox concept. Ooh, nice. Placing the CSS property display flex on a element allows you to use the other flex properties to build a responsive page. Okay, so I can see here we have 2 boxes. One is blue and one is orange red. Now let's see, we need to add the CSS property display to box container and set its value to flex. Let's see what happens. Display flex. Look at that, how nicely it went to the right of it. Yeah, that's neat. Good, let's move on to the next one and see why it happened. Maybe they'll tell us. Add flex superpowers to the tweet embed. Oh, look at that. Hi, Pinsy. And we have his tweet. To the right is a tweet embed that will be used as a practical example. Some of the elements will look better with a different layout. The last challenge demonstrated display flex. Here you'll add it to several components in the tweet embed to start adjusting their positioning. Alright. Add the CSS property display flex to all of the following items. Note that the selectors are already set up in the CSS. Okay, so we need to add display flex to the header, to the header's profile name, to the header's follow button, the header's h3 and h4, the footer and the footer stats. There are a lot of places. Okay, so header, then header profile name. You can see how nicely they will. Okay, so header's profile name. Okay, then the header's follow button, the header's h3 and h4, the footer and the footer stats. Look at that. So basically all the elements now are aligned to the right. So Flexbox aligns them into a row, so they will follow next to each other. Okay, let's go to the next one. Use the flex direction property to make a row. Alright, adding display flex to an element turns it into a flex container. This makes it possible to align any children of that element into rows or columns. You do this by adding the flex direction property to the parent item and setting it to row or column. Creating a row will align the children horizontally, and creating a column will align them vertically. Other options are flex direction. Other options for flex direction are row reverse and column reverse, which will basically do the exact same thing but the opposite way. So on the row reverse will go from right to left. Okay, note that the default value for the flex direction is a row. This is why we can see that the second box went to the row. Okay, add the CSS property flex direction to the box container element and give it the value of row reverse. That's a good exercise. So flex direction will be row reversed. Reverse. Okay, out the D. So now you can see that it's still on the row, but it's reversed. So from the right to left. If we remove this, it will go the other way around. Perfect. So far, so good. Apply the flex direction property to create rows in the tweet embed. Okay. The header and footer in the tweet embed example have child elements that could be arranged as rows using the flex direction property. This tells CSS to align the children horizontally. Alright. Add the CSS property flex direction to both the header and footer and set the value to flex direction row. It's interesting. Then change. And here flex direction row. Yeah, but that's because that's the default, right? Why would they want us to do this? Interesting. Use the flex direction property to make a column. Okay, so now we can do flex direction and set it to column. And the boxes will be on top of each other. Perfect. And if we do column reverse, guess what it will happen? It will go the other way around. Alright. Perfect. And look at that, we already are at 29%. Okay. Apply the flex direction property to create a column in the tweet embed. Okay, now that's what we want. the tweet embed header and footer use the flex direction property earlier with a row value. Also, the items inside profile name would work well stacked as a column. So yeah, we added flex direction row, but now we change it to column and it should look much better. Profile name. Let me just copy it. Okay, good. Boom. Whoa, that's a lot of text. So let me skim over it and then you can read it entirely if you wish. Okay, we have the justify content, which will help us align and space out the flex items a certain way. Okay. We have an image that shows us how the concept below works. Let's see. Whoa, look at that. So we have the wrapper, which is the flex container, and automatically within, if we set a div or whatever the container is, if we set it to display flex, then automatically the items inside it will become flex items. There are two axes, the main axis and the cross axis. So basically you can view it as the x-axis and the y-axis. We have the main start and the main end for both of for one of the axes, and for the other one cross start and cross end. So both of the axes have a start and an end. And we need to keep this in mind when we want to position the flex items within the flex container. In my experience, actually working with Flexbox and using the properties, you're going to learn much better how they work and why they work as they do. So experience is key in this case. Alright, so we have a couple of values for the justify content property. We have flex start, which will position the items to the start, and flex end is the other way around, it will position the items to the end. Then we have space between, which will leave space between items. We have space around, which will also leave space between, but it will have some space on the left and the right of the container. And then we have space evenly, which distributes space evenly between the flex items. That's like a rough sketch of it. So let's play around with it and we can see how it works. An example helps show this property in action. Add the CSS property justify content to the box container. So this property justify content you will apply to the container which has the display flex property set. And let's give it justify content. Give it a value of center. Now look at that, what happened? So we have, it's hard to see, oh yeah, so we have this gray background. Don't really like it, let me make it purple. Yeah, let's leave it gray. So basically the box here is gray, and inside it we have two boxes, a blue one and an orange one. If we're setting justify content to center, look at that, the boxes will go into the center horizontally, so on the x-axis if you want. That's it. Try the other options for the justify content property in the code editor to see their differences, but note that the value of center is the only one that will pass this challenge. Okay, so let's play around with all the 5 properties. Flex start. This will be basically the default. You can see that, oops, if I comment this out, it's basically the same. So nothing different here. But if we put flex end, look at that, they will be pushed to the right. If we say space between, then it will be, all the space will be between the two boxes, and they will be pushed all the way to the left and right. In this case we only have two boxes, so let me quickly add one more, because I want you to see how they act. Box 3, background color purple with white, and I need to add the box 3 here. Okay, so let's do it again. First we have flex start, so you can see all the three will be next to each other. Flex end will push them to the right. Then if we do center, obviously they will be in the center. Space between will leave a little space between them, but you can see now that if we have the third element, it will be pushed exactly into the center, and all the remaining spaces will be between the boxes. If we're going to have space around, then look at that, we have a little space on the left and a little space on the right. Basically it will be half of the space between these elements in the center. So you can see now that the values flex start, flex end, space between, around, they are pretty semantic, so you can actually understand what they do. Space between, okay, so we have space between. Space around, so there is space around them. And space evenly, which guess what it does? We have the same amount of space between them and the exterior, so the container left and right. I'd say it's pretty obvious, right? So it's not like rocket science. You just have to know that these properties exist, and then you can play around with them. Alright, let me do this back to center and see if it goes if we submit. Perfect, it goes. Now back to the tweet example. The last challenge we learned justify content. Okay, add the CSS property justify content to the header's profile name. Whoops. And set it to any option, any of the options from the last challenge. Okay, let's see what happens if we do center. Oh, look at that. Or flex end. That's interesting, right? Why does that happen? Well, that's because we have, let me put a background color here. Ooh, that's ugly. Let's make it. Look at that, nice. Okay, so we have flex direction column. So what that does, it's changing the axis. So now instead of going from left to right as we did in the previous example, now we're going from top to bottom. This is why if we do flex start, it will be on the top. If we do flex end, it will go on the bottom. If we do center, it will stay in the middle. Also we can do space between, and it will push the space or space around. Look at that. So I'd say it's pretty obvious. If you manage to learn the basics, so how flex direction works, what these justify content values do, then it will be pretty obvious what happens. Okay, I hope that CSS Grid is as easy as this. Alright, align items. So basically, we had that link. Let me open it again. In this example, the main axis if we're on the main axis, we're working with justify content. But on the cross axis, we'll be working with align items. So they are basically the opposite, I guess, axis. And also align items have pretty much the same values. So flex start, flex end, center. We have stretch, which stretches the item to fill the flex container, and we have baseline, which align the items to the baseline. I haven't really used these two values that much, so let's see what they do. Yeah, so align items is property similar to justify content. Justify content property aligned flex items along the main axis. For rows, the main axis is a horizontal line, and for columns is a vertical line. Flex containers also have a cross axis, so this one, which is the opposite of the main axis. For rows, yeah, so basically the opposite. It's very confusing if we read it, but let's play with the values and we can see it in action, and it will be much easier to understand. An example helps show you this property in action. Okay, again, reading my mind. Add the CSS property align items to the box container and give it a value of center. Whoa, look at that! What happened? So you can see that it went from on the cross axis and it went to the center. That's amazing. This is a very powerful tool you can use to center elements vertically, which was very hard. I mean, not very hard, was much harder to do before Flexbox. You had to use all sorts of tricks, but now with only one property, you can go from this to being centered. Or if we go one step further, we can also use justify content center. Justify content. Yeah, we have the width. Oh, we need a bigger width for the container. Switch this. Yeah. So look at that. With two properties, you can push the boxes in the middle of the container, which is amazing. If we remove this, look at that, they are stretched. They have a fixed width of 100 pixels, and the height by default is interesting. Yeah, the height is maximum because we have display flex. Okay, let me remove this because we don't need it. Put this back to 200 pixels. And let's play around with the align items property. We have center, we have flex start, which will basically push them up. We have flex end, we have stretch, which I think is the default because if we remove it entirely, it looks like this. And we have baseline, which I'm not sure what it does. Let's see the difference between baseline and flex start. Oh, I see. So they're basically somehow centered on a line here. Okay, that's interesting. Align items to their baselines. Baseline is a text concept. Think of it as the line that the letters sit on. Okay. As I said, I haven't used this that much, so okay. Let's leave it to the center and move on to the next challenge. Let me look at the chat. Hello Aman, hello Cool, Johnny, and all of you who yes. Welcome to the live stream. Okay. Use the align items property in the tweet embed. Alright. Add the CSS property align items to the headers follow button. And set the value to center. Without it and with it. That's not that different, right? Background color purple because we want to debug it. Oh, I see. So by default it's stretched. Horizontal, no, vertically it's stretched. But if we do align item center, you can see that, well, actually let me give a background color here of orange red. Okay, and now without the align item center, you can see that the bottom is stretched the entire height. So if we add it, it will be contained in the center. Okay, next. Woo! Flex wrap property. This one I use pretty often also. CSS Flexbox has a feature to split a flex item into multiple rows or columns. By default, the flex container will fit all elements inside. Together. For example, a row will all be on one line. So you can see here the example, all the boxes are on the same line. However, using the flex wrap property tells CSS to wrap items. This means the extra items move into a new row or column. The breakpoint of where the wrapping happens depends on the size of the items and the size of the container. So we have the following properties of the flex wrap. No wrap, which is the default. Wrap, which wraps the items from left to right if they are in the row, or top to bottom if they are in a column. And we have wrap reverse, which does the opposite. The current layout has too many boxes for one row. Add the CSS property flex wrap to the back box container and set the value to wrap. Now look at that. Basically they had all a width of 25%. So if we apply the math, we should only see 4 boxes in a row. But by default, the flex wrap property is set to no wrap, so they will be squished on the same row. If we're going to add 2 more boxes, because why not? So we can see how they squish it in. Like this, 7 and 8. One can be white and one can be purple. Why don't you have purple? Okay, look at that. So now we have 8 boxes all squished in the same row. But if we add flex wrap, they go nicely in the new row, which is great. Use the flex shrink property to shrink items. Someone in the chat asked about flex grow. Okay, now we are with flex shrink. I haven't used this that much, so let's see what it does. So far all the properties in the challenge apply to the flex container, the parent of the flex items. However, there are several useful properties for the flex items. The first is the flex shrink property. When it's used, it allows an item to shrink if the flex container is too small. Items shrink when the width of the parent container is smaller than the combined widths of all of the flex items within it. Okay, that sounds a little confusing. So we're going to play around with it to see what happens actually. The flex shrink property takes numbers as values. The higher the number, the more it will shrink compared to the other items in the container. For example, if one item has a flex shrink value of 1 and another one has flex shrink value of 3, the one with the value of 3 will shrink 3 times as much as the other. Okay, let's apply it to see. Flex shrink 1 and flex shrink 2. Okay, look at that. So now box 1 is twice as big as box 2. Right? Yeah. If we do flex shrink 3, then this is 3 times bigger. So basically it takes up 70%, 75% of the container. Okay. That's interesting. As I said, I never used it, but maybe there are case scenario where you will use it. Okay, and now we're flex grow. So cool Johnny, if you're still in the live stream, you can see how it works. Basically, it's the opposite of flex shrink. The flex shrink controls the size of items when the container shrinks. The flex grow controls the size of the items when the parent container expands. Okay. Using a similar example for the last challenge, if one item has a flex grow value of 1 and the other has a flex grow value of 3, the one with the value of 3 will grow 3 times as much as the other. Add a CSS property flex grow to both boxes. Okay. Oops. You only need this. And this one should be 2. And this one should be 1. Oops, not 21. Okay. Nice. So see, they didn't have a width. So now if we applied flex grow, the first one will be 1/3 and the other one will be 2/3. Basically you add up, I guess, the grows and you calculate by dividing the value to the total amount, right? That's a little bit of math there. Let's see with 3. This one is 3 times bigger than this one. Okay. Next. Flex basis property set the initial size of an item. Okay. So this sets the initial size of an item before CSS makes adjustments. Oh, yeah. Can I go back? So Link says that if we apply flex grow and if we resize the browser, we can see it in action better. So let's do that. Look at that, how nicely it will remain 1/3 and 2/3 all the time. That's pretty neat. Alright, let's go to flex basis. The units used by the flex basis property are the same as other size unit properties. The value auto sized items based on the content. Okay, set the initial size of the boxes using flex basis. Give box 1 a value of 10 EM and the box 2 a value of 20 EM. So basically twice as big. Yeah, look at that. Alright, next. Flex shorthand property. Oh, nice. I've been using flex one a lot. So apparently this flex property is the combination of flex grow, flex shrink, and flex basis. For example, flex 1, 0, 10 will set the flex grow to 1, flex shrink to 0, and flex basis to 10. The default property settings are flex 0, 1, auto. So auto will take the width of the children. Then we have flex grow 0. so it won't grow, and flex shrink 1, so it will be the same for all of them. Add the CSS property flex to both box 1 and box 2. Give box 1 the value of flex grow to 2, flex shrink to 2, and flex base is 150 pixels. Okay. Give the box 2 the values flex grow of 1, shrink of 1, and again 150 pixels. So now what happens? Oh, look at that. So, the values will cause box 1 to grow to fill the extra spaces twice the rate as box 2 when the container is greater than 300 pixels, so the combined value of them, and shrink as twice the rate of box 2 when the container is less than 300 pixels. Okay, so basically they take up both 150 pixels, and box 1 will shrink and grow twice as fast. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Nice. We have a question in the chat. How does the flex basis work? Yeah, so that's basically the initial size, as Klink said. Use the order property to rearrange items. This one is a nice one. So basically you can add the order property and give it a number. Then you can rearrange them by switching the numbers. So if, for example, we have box 1 the order of 1 and box 2 the order of 2, you can see that the first box will go to the left, so it will be the first one, and the order 2 will go to the right. But if we change now and give the box 1 the order of 3, which is bigger than 2, it will go to its right. It makes much more sense if we have 3 elements and we can see it. So let me create another one quickly. Okay, so we have 1, 2, and 3. And let's give it a width of 33.22%. Does that work? With 100%. Okay, what I did wrong? Purple box. Oh, box 3. Okay. Yeah. So we have the blue, which is order 1, the orange, which is order 2, or the purple, which is order 3. This is basically not the default, but also if they have the same order, which by default the order I think is either 0 or 1. I'm not 100%, but it is the same value for all. So now, for example, let's say that you want the purple one to be the first. So without changing the HTML, you can set the order to be 1 and then set the order to the first box to be 2. And look at that. Now the purple one of the order 1 will be first, and then goes these two, which have the same order, but because they are following next to each other, they will be like that placed. I hope that makes sense, right? Okay. Let me run. This should be order 1. Oh, box 1 property set to 2, and this should be 1. Alright, to pass the test. Oh, and we are 1 away to finish. Align self property. Oh, this is a good one also. This property allows you to adjust each item's alignment individually instead of setting them all at once. So remember that we were setting the align items property, which will align all the boxes inside the container. But with align self, you can basically specify each individual box how should behave. So let's set it align self. This one we want to be center. Look at that, it went to the center. And the second one we want to be flex end. So now it went to the end. Let me add also line items here, center, so you can see again what this did by default. So by default we controlled all the boxes inside it with align items. Flex and we pushed all the boxes down. But if we set align self on one of the boxes, it will overwrite the align items and it will go to the center. Alright, I think that's it. We learned CSS Flexbox. Nice. It's not that complicated. There are a few properties which you need to be aware of. But if you're going to play around with it, you're going to exercise, you'll see how easy it is to place whatever you want, wherever you want it. And I think CSS Grid offers you even more custom alignment opportunities, or whatever you call it. Okay. Let me drink a little water and we can continue with CSS Grid. In the meantime, if you have any questions regarding CSS Flexbox, let me know in the chat. Okay. Joe is asking if you want them not to shrink after a min. Okay. I'm not sure your question, Joy. Cool Johnny says, I wonder if freeCodeCamp covers more advanced CSS Grid like max content, shortened properties, etc. I don't know. Min-max function, I have no idea. So for CSS Grid, I'm going to learn it with you. I meant if you have like 2 children, you want them not to shrink after a min width. I guess you can set a min width to them, right? How do you restrict the size to a min width? Just set the flex basis to a size and then set the flex shrink to 0. I think that will work. Joy, open a CodePen project, quickly create the boxes and play around with the Flexbox and flex shrink, flex basis, and you can see what it does. I won't do it now, but if you want, I can help you. Join my Discord chat and we can talk there. Yeah, so Johnny says if you don't want your Flexbox children to shrink, then Flexbox shrink to 0. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Ooh, now let's see. CSS Grid. CSS Grid helps you easily build complex web designs. It works by turning an HTML element into a grid container with rows and columns for you to place children's elements where you want within the grid. In my not so vast knowledge of CSS Grid and the difference between CSS Grid and Flexbox is that basically Flexbox works only on it's only one dimensional, so a row or a column. But CSS Grid is 2-dimensional. You can have rows and columns. Aman says that CSS grid is fire. Okay. I guess we can start. First lesson. Whoa, look at those beautiful colors. Nice. Create your first CSS grid. Turn your HTML element into a grid container by setting the display property to grid. This gives you the ability to use all the other properties associated with CSS grid. Note, in CSS grid, the parent element is referred to as a container, and its children are called items. Isn't that the same for Flexbox? Okay. Change the display of the div with the container class to grid. Okay, I'm excited to see what happens. Display grid. Nothing? I'm disappointed. Why it's not happening? Okay, I guess we're learning what it's happened or not. Simply creating a grid element doesn't get you very far. Apparently, because we did it and nothing happened, you need to define the structure of the grid as well. To add some columns to the grid, use the grid template columns property on a grid container. Ooh, so we have a property, grid template columns. This will give your grid 2 columns that are each 50 pixels wide. Ooh, I'm excited. I have goosebumps. Let's see. Grid template columns and set it to 50 pixels, 50 pixels. Whoa, look at that. Yeah, I'm kidding. I know a little bit about grid, but I haven't been playing very much with it. So it's still relatively new to me because I haven't played around with it. But I watched, there is, if you're into video tutorials, there is CSS Grid by Westboss. You can watch that. That's what I watched when it came out, like, I think a year or so ago. Okay, and what happens? So now you can be a witness of how I'm learning programming. Basically, I put a property like this from a tutorial and then, okay, but what if happens with, so I'm thinking, what happens if I change this to 100? Okay, so, the first row, it's now 100 pixels. Okay, but what happens if I add 50 pixels before here? Look at that. So now we have one column of 50 pixels, one of 100 pixels, and one of 50 pixels. That's interesting. That's how I basically learned programming. I was looking at tutorials, and then I paused the tutorials, and I changed the code to see how it breaks, or it doesn't. In my experience, that's the best way to learn. Maybe you have other ways to learn. Feel free to use whatever works for you. Okay. Give the grid container 3 columns that are each 100 pixels wide. So we specify here the columns, and we need 3. One, two, three. Okay, look at that. Let's move on to the next one. Clink is asking, I'm wondering about subgrid. Have you heard about it? I heard about it. I never used it. And I don't think I saw a tutorial about it. Yeah. Alright, so we have columns, but we want rows. So let's see how to do that. Add rows with grid template rows. Okay, that's pretty obvious. The grid you created in the last challenge will set the number of rows automatically. Okay, so it's pretty smart. To adjust the rows manually, use the grid template rows property in the same way you use grid template columns. Okay. To add rows to the grid that are 50 pixels, not to add. Add 2 rows to the grid that are 50 pixels tall each. So grid template rows 15 pixels, 15 pixels. Okay, I guess if we do 100 pixels, 50 pixels, 50 pixels, there's nothing. Oh, look at that, we have empty space. Nice. So if we do 50 pixels more, whoa, you can see now that even though we don't have elements, it will grow accordingly. Nice, nice, nice. But I wonder why we have some space here. Oh, that's because it takes up 100%? Yeah. Oh, and look at that, it's not overflowing. So basically it stays fixed. Okay. So now we have to learn how to make this responsive. Let's see. Chat. Okay. Let's delete this so we can submit the test. And go to the next challenge. Use CSS grid units to change the size of columns and rows. Ooh, look at that, how many values we have here. We have auto, 50 pixels, 10%, 2 FR and 1 FR. FR sets the column or row to a fraction of the available space. Okay. Percent will adjust the column or row to the percent width of its container. Okay, so row will set the width also, not the height. That's interesting. Hey Ankit, welcome. I'm fine, how are you? Okay. The snippet creates 5 columns. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The first column is as wide as its content. Okay. The second column is 50 pixels. The third column is 10% of its container. And for the last 2 columns, the remaining space is divided into 3 sections. 2 are allocated for the 4th column and 1 for the 5th. Make a grid with 3 columns, whose width are as follows: 1 FR, 100 pixels and 2 FR. So 1 FR, 100 pixels and 2 FR. Okay. Look at that. So this is fixed 100%, and then all the remaining space is divided by 3 because we have 1 FR plus 2 FR. And this will take 2 of those thirds and this will take 1 of it. Pretty nice. Let's see when we stretch. Okay, so I was asking how you do responsive. So basically this is how, right? This is fun. I like CSS grid so far. In the grids you have created, the columns have all been tied up against each other. Okay, yeah, so they are next to each other. Sometimes you want a gap in between the columns. To add a gap between the columns, use the CSS column gap property, like this. Whoa, that's nice. This creates 10 pixels of empty space between all of our columns. Okay, let's see. Grid column gap to be 20 pixels. Whoa, look at that. Now we have space between our boxes. And I guess we also have grid row gap. 20 pixels. Yeah, nice. I think this is what we're going to use in the next exercise. So yeah, I was right. I'm from the future. So grid, row, gap, and 5 pixels. Okay. You can see how it basically cuts from the height. That's nice. So it doesn't pushes the elements down, but instead takes from their height. That's pretty interesting. Okay, 25% completed. Add gaps faster with grid gap. Oh boy, so we have one grid gap which is shortened for the both. Alright. If grid gap has one value, it will create a gap between all rows and columns. However, if there are two values, it will use the first one to set the gap between the rows and the second one to set the gap between the columns. Okay, let's play around with it. Grid gap, 10 pixels. Nice, it's nice and clean. Or if we have 10 pixels, 20 pixels. Okay, so first one is for rows and the next one is for columns. Alright. Oh, this is what we have to do. Okay. Let's see the chat. I love the height width cut from gaps, 4 gaps. Okay, it's nice. Ankit, me done, only projects remaining. Oh, so you finished CSS grid and you only have the projects remaining. Nice. I'm glad that you're following along. Well done. I hope those of you who are watching from the future, if you're not now in the live stream, are doing the same thing. Okay. Use grid column to control spacing. Okay. Up to this point, all the properties that have been discussed are for grid containers. The grid column property is the first one for use on the grid items themselves. The hypothetical horizontal and vertical lines that create the grid are referred to as lines. These lines are numbered starting with 1 at the top left corner of the grid and move to the right for the columns and down to the rows. Okay, so this is how it looks for a 3 by 3 grid. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. To control the amount of columns an item will consume, you can use the grid column property in conjunction with the line numbers you want the items to start and stop at. This is interesting. Here's an example. Grid column 1/3. This will make the item start at the first vertical line 1 of the grid on the left and span to the third line of the grid, consuming 2 columns. Make the item with the class item 5 consume the last 2 columns of the grid. So grid column, the last 2, so 2/4, right? Oh, look at that, that's neat. See how this spans now across these 2 columns? Nice, nice, nice. Yeah, and we have grid row, which is basically the same but for the rows. Let's see, make the item with the make the element with the item 5 class consume the last 2 rows. So grid row, let's see, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So we can say 2/4. Okay. Yeah, so it will span across this. Nice, 41%. Align an item horizontally using justify self. In CSS grid, the content of each item is located in a box, which is referred to as a cell. You can align the content's position within its cell horizontally using the justify self property on the grid item. By default, this property has a value of stretch, which will make the content fill in the whole width of the cell. This CSS grid property accepts other values as well: start, center, and end. This is pretty similar to Flexbox. Use the justify self property to center the item with the class item2. Let's see what this does. Justify self item2. Center, not item2. Okay. So now it takes up just the space it needed for the 2 to display. Nice. Align an item vertically using align self. Yeah, so the align self is the same as Flexbox. Align self and self left. Okay, so you can see it takes up the height needed for the number. Yash. I love reading your blogs, following your past. Keep sharing, bro. Okay, buddy, I will. Next, align all items horizontally using justify items. Oh, so we have justify items here too. Christian said that you should really check out Responsive Mondrian by Layoutland to witness what amazing things CSS Grid can do for you. Wonderful course, says Emmanuel. Okay, I'll check that out. Maybe you can give me a link. Let's see, justify items. I guess this does the same as in Flexbox. Sometimes you want all the items in your CSS grid to share the same alignment. You can use the previous learned property and align them individually, or you can align them all at once horizontally by using justify items on your grid container. This property can accept all the same values you learned about in the previous 2 challenges. The difference being that it will move all the items in our grid to the desired alignment. Use this property to center all your items horizontally. Justify items center. Okay, so yeah, this is basically for all of them instead of just doing one at a time. Joy says that there is a Flexbox dev tool that really helps to visualize the lines in the grid. Yeah, in CSS grid, I know. I'm now in Brave, which is sort of like a Chrome. But yeah, you can see here also the lines and the boxes if you inspect. Although probably Flexbox is better at this. Okay. Using align items property on a grid will set the vertical alignment for all the items. So this is pretty obvious already. Align items, send the end. Boom, and they all go down. Divide the grid into an area template. Okay, now this is nice. I've seen this, but I haven't used it. You can group cells of your grid together into an area and give that area a custom name. Do this by using grid template areas on the container like this. So we have the property, and then look at that. We have basically 3 strings here, all of them having, the first one has header, header, header. So basically the header should span across this row. Then we have advert here, the content, 2 columns, and the footer here, an entire row. Oops. Yay. The code above merges to the top 3 cells together. So yeah, basically I said that, right? Note, every word in the code represents a cell, and every pair of quotation marks represents a row. In addition to custom labels, you can use a period to designate an empty cell in the grid. Okay, paste the area template so that the cell labeled advert becomes an empty cell. It's interesting, this is not highlighted. So let's put it like this. Is it just me or this it doesn't work? Why is it green? Gray. And I can't see it working here. So yeah, who knows? They have a bug, apparently. Oh well. Place items in grid areas using the grid area property. Can't spell area. Area. Okay, that's how you spell it, right? After creating an area template for your grid container, as shown in the previous challenge, you can place an item in your custom area by referencing the name you gave it. To do this, you use the grid area property on the items like this. Oh, so I guess this didn't work because we didn't give them the name, right? Okay. Place an element with the item 5 class in the footer. In the footer area using the grid area property. So, grid area should be footer. Whoa, look at that. So now this is applied. You can see that it spans across the entire row at the bottom. Nice. These remain the same because they don't have a grid area defined. Okay, next. Use grid area without creating an areas template. What? Grid area property you learned in the last challenge can be used in another way. If your grid doesn't have an area template to reference, you can create an area on the fly for an item to be placed like this. Grid area 1124. This is using the line numbers you learned above earlier to define where the area for this item will be. The numbers in the example above represent these values. Horizontal line to start at, slash vertical line to start at, slash horizontal line to start at, slash vertical line to end at. Oh. So, horizontal line to start, vertical line to start, horizontal line to end, vertical line to end. So 1, 1 should be this, then 2 horizontal line to start. Then 2 should be this, so 1, 1, 2, 4, right? So it will go here. So the items will, in this example, will consume the rows between lines 1 and 2 and the columns between 1 and 4. Okay, so vertical line start at 1. That's confusing for me. Oh, no, yeah, it's true. So 1, 1, and then 2, 4. Okay, Let's play with it so we can see what it does. Yeah, so as Aman said, 4 is at the bottom, not here. I initially set here, but it's here. Grid area should be place the element with item 5 class between the third and fourth horizontal lines and between the first and fourth vertical lines. Okay, so first is the horizontal line start. So we need between the first and fourth, and then here we need the third and fourth, so 3 and 4, and here 1 and 4. Oh, look at that. So basically we have the footer again without having to declare that grid array template. So 3 1 and 4 4. That's like setting the x y x x1 x2 y1 1 2, something like that. Or more likely x, yeah, x1 y1 x2 y2. Hello Andra, welcome to the live stream. You're late like usual. But still, we love you. How are you? Okay, reduce repetition using the repeat function. Okay, let me drink water. For some reason, OBS doesn't work anymore. Let me check. Okay. When you use grid template columns and grid template rows to define the structure of a grid, you enter the value for each row or column you created. Let's say you want a grid with 100 rows of the same height. It isn't very practical to insert 100 values individually. Fortunately, there's a better way by using the repeat function to specify the number of times you want your column or row to be repeated, followed by the comma and the value you want to repeat. Here's an example that would create the 100 row grid, each row at 50% tall. So repeat 100 at 50%. You can also repeat multiple values with the repeat function and insert the function amongst other values when defining a grid. So repeat to 1fr50, 1fr50, and then 20. I guess this is what it does. This translates to, yeah, look at that. So it was below. 1fr50, 1fr50, 20. Note the 1fr50% it repeated twice followed by 20. Use repeat to remove repetition from grid template columns. So I guess we can say here repeat 1f3, 1fr. Select this, and it could be like that. Look at that. Neat. 77%. We are closer to learning grid, CSS grid. Limit item size using the min-max function. There's another built-in function to use with grid template columns and grid template rows called min-max. It's used to limit the size of items when the grid container changes size. To do this, you need to specify the that's not the right word. The acceptable size range for your item. Here is an example. Grid template columns 100 pixels, and then min-max 50 pixels, 200 pixels. In the code above, grid template columns is set to create two columns. The first is 100 pixels wide, and the second has a minimum of 50 pixels and a maximum of 200 pixels. Okay, so this is like setting the min width and max width. Using the min-max function, replace the 1fr in the repeat function with a column size that has the minimum width of 90 pixels and the maximum width of 1 fr, and resize the preview panel to see the effect. Okay, sure, why not? So replace the 1 fr to be min max 90 pixels and 1 fr. Let's see. Okay, so it will go all across when it's bigger, and it should stay at 90 pixels when we zoom in. Nice. So 1 fr will be applied for the maximum and the 90 pixels for the minimum. That's nice, really nice. Create flexible layouts using autofill. Ooh, nice. The repeat function comes with an optional called autofill. This allows you to automatically insert as many rows or columns of your desired size as possible depending on the size of the container. You can create flexible layouts when combining autofill with min-max like this. Repeat autofill min-max, okay. When the container changes size, this setup keeps inserting 60 pixels columns and stretching them until it can insert another one. If your container can fit all the items on one row, it will move them down to the new one. Okay, let's see. In the first grid, so we have two grids here apparently, use autofill with repeat to fill the grid with columns that have a minimum width of 60 pixels and a maximum of 1 fr. Then resize the preview to see autofill in action. Okay, so instead of saying 3, we can say autofill. Okay. Oh, look at that, this is nice. So basically they will be 90 pixels, but if we, why they keep jumping? 1 fr, 60 pixels. Shouldn't they stay 60 pixels all the time? Don't understand why are they jumping. Oh wow. The minimum is 60 pixels, maximum is 1 fr. Then they will grow to fill the entire row now? Where are you, CSS grid experts? Well, they will be at least 60 pixels to begin with and no larger than 1 fr. Once it gets bigger than 1 fr, then it will go back down to 60. Yeah, but 1 fr is basically one part. So here we have 5 parts, but what's up with this empty space? Hey, as I said, I'm learning too this time as a CSS grid. They are filled with blank rows. Oh. Oh, I see. So this is a blank row now. I mean, blank column. Yeah. Oh, I see. Nice, nice, nice. Turn on the Firefox DevTool and you will see that. I don't have Firefox. Yeah, so basically now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 rows. 10 columns. Okay. Good to know. What happens if we do repeat here the same? 3 min max 60 pixels 1 FR. Or doesn't repeat work on the rows? Okay. I think I went over that now. Let's just go to the next one. Create flexible layouts using autofill. Autofit. Okay. So autofit works almost identically to autofill. The only difference is that when the container size exceeds the size of all the items combined, autofill keeps inserting empty rows and columns. Okay, so that's why I was wondering why we have the empty space. Autofill keeps inserting, yeah, I read that. While autofit collapses those empty rows and columns and stretches your items to fit the size of the container. Okay, so now that makes sense. Autofill will keep adding columns, while autofit it will stretch them out. So let's see, autofit. Look at that. So this was the behavior as I was expecting at first. So basically they will stretch out 1 FR, and then when you scroll in, you can see that they go to the next line. Boom, boom, boom. Okay, so that's the difference between autofit and autofill. Practice makes it perfect. I mean, makes it better. Okay, so in the second grid I'll use, the second grid. Okay, sorry. So here, repeat autofit. Oh, look at that, this is perfect. Now we can see the difference between autofill and autofit. You can see the first one, it will create columns, while the second one, it will grow. But when we are smaller, it's the same. When the items total width is smaller than the container's width. Neat, neat, neat. Okay, 91%. I guess we have 2 more. Look at that, we have a nice website now. CSS Grid can be an easy way to make your site more responsive by using media queries to rearrange grid areas. Change dimensions of a grid and rearrange the placement of items. In the preview, when the viewport width is 300 pixels or more, the number of columns change from 1 to 2. The advertisement area then occupies the left column completely. Oh wow. So we have now one column, 2 columns. And when we scroll in, we'll zoom in. I always say scroll. Then it will jump here. And that's because we have a grid template area here defined, and here in the media query is something else. This is mobile first, so this will apply on mobile, and then when the min width is 300 pixels, it will place the advert on the left. When the viewport width is 400 pixels more, make the header area occupy the top row completely. Okay, let's see, this will be a nice feature. Okay, make the header area occupy the top row completely and the footer area occupy the bottom row completely. So we want footer to span across here and header to span across here. So that's easy, right? We need to change this to header and this to footer, right? Oh no, so this should remain like that and this should change because this is 400 pixels and above. Header and footer. So now we basically have this when it's 40 pixels and bigger, then between 400 pixels and 300 pixels will be like this, and on mobile will be like this. That is pretty amazing, isn't it? We can also do crazy stuff like moving the area this side. Look at that. So now the area is on the right side. Okay. 95%. So this is the last one. Create grids within grids. Whoa. Isn't this subgrids or something? Turning an element into a grid only affects the behavior of its direct descendants. So by turning a direct descendant into a grid, you have a grid within a grid. For example, by setting the display and grid template columns property of an element with the item3 class, you create a grid within your grid. Turn the element with the item3 into a grid. Display grid with 2 columns with a width of auto. So we want, let's see, what was the property? Grid template columns with 2 columns with a width of auto and 1 FR using display and grid template columns. Yeah, so auto and 1 FR. 1 FR. Okay, so this one is taking up as much as it needs, and this one is taking up the rest of it. So now we have a grid within a grid. This was really fun. I learned a bunch now. CSS grid, it's really nice. I should use it more. We completed CSS grid also. Yay! Thanks for all of you who joined so far in the live stream. Say something in the chat so I can see who's been here for me and with me so far. Okay. Next, tomorrow we have 5 projects. I mean, not tomorrow. Starting tomorrow, we have the last 5 projects, and we can complete the responsive web design certification, which will be nice. Joy, Clean, come on. Thank you for staying with me so far. Okay, so tomorrow I'm going to start working on the responsive web design projects. We'll start with the tribute page, then we do the survey form. That will be tomorrow morning. Tomorrow afternoon, that's Wednesday, yeah. Then on Thursday we do the product landing page, the technical documentation page, and then Friday morning we do the personal portfolio web page. I know that a lot of you were waiting for this, so I'm pretty excited to do them. I think I built some of the projects before. I basically finished the front-end certification back 2017 or so, 2018. And I remember I built a tribute page, but I haven't done this, so it will be fun to do. Okay, let me know if you have any other questions. I'm going to wrap up this live stream now, and I'm going to prepare tomorrow's live stream with the tribute page and survey form. I'm going to do them from scratch. So that should be fun, right? Okay. If there are no questions, then thank you all for joining. It was really fun. I enjoyed learning CSS Grid. CSS Flexbox, I pretty much knew about it, so I hope that was useful for you. And yeah, see you tomorrow for those of you who will tune in, or for those of you who see this recording, see you whenever you want to see the next live stream or the next recording. Have a good day, Clink, Joy, Andra, Aman, and everyone who's been with me so far. Thank you. Bye.